Now, there's a reason why Eastern Europe is considered to be a lot more conservative, a lot more far right than the enlightened counterpart that is Western Europe. And that is because after decades of communism, most people here do not trust the institutions. And the reason we do not trust the institutions is because we have experience with institutions being corrupt. So we are aware that everything, including the science, can be corrupt. If you want a little bit more insight, I would suggest that you watch the Netflix TV show called Chernobyl. Like, even though it's a TV show and even though it's fictional, the producer has spent a lot of time understanding the ideology, understanding the communist system, and explaining exactly how this corruption takes place. If you also want some historical things, go and look up on Lysenkoism. It actually created a famine in the Soviet Union because the party decided that evolution is a Nazi myth and it has no root in science whatsoever, so instead they promoted Lysenkoism. And obviously that was wrong and it created a famine. So historically speaking, there are many cases where the institutions become corrupt. And this is why people here in Eastern Europe have more faith in their families, their close friends, and their communities, rather in what the quote-unquote science says. But things aren't the same in the West. In the West, people seem to treat the science like it's gospel. And when you say the science, they do not treat the scientific method, which is the one that's accurate. They do not treat that as gospel. Instead, they treat what the scientists say. And by the scientists, it's almost similar to what you notice in politics. It's usually a person that has managed to get a cult of personality, or a person that's being propped up by the media as the representative of the science. And their word is law. But when you look at what actually happens within these institutions, when you look at what's happening at the university level, or when you look at what's happening even in the hospitals, or the people that are making the protocols and they're writing the scientific papers, you will notice that corruption not only exists there, but flourishes. So I'm not really surprised about this article where scientists are saying they're afraid to have the debate, that they're afraid to even apply the scientific method and submit it for a peer review. What I am surprised is the fact that The Guardian is publishing this article, because for the last couple of years, if not the last decade, not only would The Guardian and other mainstream publications refuse to even acknowledge the fact that there is a culture of fear in gender medicine research, but they don't even want to acknowledge the fact that there is a minority of people that want to detransition. And their voices not only are unheard, but they are heavily suppressed on Reddit and other social media websites. So these are some uncomfortable conversations that the fragile media doesn't want to have. But as I predicted, the conversations will eventually happen, because it's starting to affect a lot of girls. And Sweden was the first nation in the world that started looking into it when they noticed that a lot of girls were transitioning. And there is this unspoken rule in society that when something starts influencing women, then people actually look into it. If it influences men, people are a little bit more stoic. It's like, well, they're men, they're tough, they can take it. But when it starts to influence women or little girls, then people are looking into it. So Sweden, before the pandemic, noticed that there is a huge increase in the number of women that are transitioning. So you have the representative of the Swedish media himself making all of these documentaries and looking into the thing and starting to talk with people that wanted to detransition and people that went through the surgeries that got botched. And the activists were absolutely horrified, and they were like, no, we're not going to go on his show. We do not want to give airtime. And it was like a left-leaning mainstream show. But the pandemic happened, so I would require someone from Sweden to actually tell me what ended up with that conversation. But it's interesting that now we get to see the same conversation happening in Britain. It is just one article in The Guardian, but still, it's better than nothing. And you get to see scientists saying that critical thinking and open debate are pillars of scientific and medical research. And this is just not how the way things are viewed, especially in the West. They view open debate to be fascist, no platform for fascists. So like if they label a scientist to be a fascist, then he cannot be part of the open debate. Even if his arguments are true, they will never be debunked because he will just not partake into the debate. Critical thinking is also removed, like we saw during the pandemic. Many pieces from mainstream media article saying that you shouldn't think for yourself, that's dangerous, just listen to what the mainstream media is saying. The correct system is that the science is publishing papers, and the only people able to read those papers are the journalists. So the journalists commune with the science, and then the journalist is going to tell you what to think. Like, that is the system that we've had for the last couple of years. Definitely not a system encouraging critical thinking, especially in a world where social media is also curating the search results. Especially now before the American election, I find it more and more difficult to obtain the videos that I want or to get the search results that I want because everything is curated. So professional doctors are increasingly scared to openly discuss their view on the treatment on children questioning their gender identity. And this has been discussed by right-wing circles. There have been many instances where a right-winger pretended to be a teenager, and they phoned the doctor, and within like 15 minutes or less, they managed to get the approval to show up in a clinic and have further conversation on what pills they should take. The idea that you can have someone that believes they're in the different body and the doctor can say, well, actually, maybe you're not, is unthinkable. In fact, it is called gender affirming, which is very bizarre because when I went to med school, affirming wasn't something that you do with a person that seeks help. Like, the patient isn't the one that comes and say, hey, you know, I think I have diabetes, and your job as a doctor is to affirm that. Like, no, your job as a doctor is to consult, run the test, run the diagnosis, and the diagnosis can be positive or negative. It's not up to the patient to self-diagnose, because otherwise, what is the purpose of the doctor? But it seems that the new purpose of the doctor is to just sign the receipt. Just to sign a piece of paper that allows the citizen to have access to some drugs that normally they wouldn't. And at that point, why not just remove the doctor? Why not just allow the citizen to just have access to the drugs unconstrained? If the doctor can only sign as a yes, and it's just a formality, just a rubber stamp, like, I'm sorry, that's not medicine, that's bureaucracy. So apparently, this is a conclusion that Hilary Cass has noticed in her review of gender identity services for children this week, which warned that a toxic debate had resulted in a culture of fear. Her conclusion was echoed by doctors, academic researchers, and scientists who have said that this climate has had a chilling effect on research. So I want you to understand, right? Like, if you create a culture of fear on social media, if Skullfuck47 calls someone a poopy head, immediately we have trust and safety councils to fix that. We have systems in place to make sure that no one uses gamer words. But what is thing that affects the health of millions, which is the field of medical research, all of a sudden the people that are creating the culture of fear get no punishment. Like, why can't we identify who is responsible for creating the culture of fear? Because the culture of fear doesn't just exist from the ether. Like, there are people pushing for it. And why are the people pushing for a culture of fear still allowed to have jobs in the medical field? They are a legit danger to society. I do not want my medical researchers to not explore something that can lead to a cure, or to be forced to push for something that they know is wrong. Because again, once the papers are made, once the studies are finished, it's going to affect the way doctors treat millions of people. Like, this is incredibly dangerous. So anyone that is threatening and creating a culture of fear should be fired. It's interesting that if you find a janitor that said some racist jokes on Twitter, like, immediately people will say, yeah, well, of course he should be fired. But when you have people that are threatening and they're creating a culture of fear in the research, in the academia, no, that's fine. Keep it up. Some said that they had been deferred from pursuing what they believed to be crucial studies, saying that merely entering the arena would put their reputation at risk. Others spoke of abuse on social media, academic conferences being shut down, biases in publishing, and personnel cost of speaking out. Again, like, those people have no place in the medical industry. The ones creating the culture of fear, completely unacceptable. In most areas of health, medical researchers have freedom to answer questions to problems without fear and judgment. I just want to point out that there are academic papers in ethical medicine that talk about abortions even after the baby is born, and they will say, well, yeah, but because the baby didn't form the consciousness yet, it's fine, right? Because they're not really a human being. And these are papers, and they're just quote unquote asking questions. So they can exist, right? Like, it's not reputation ruining. It doesn't get the entire places being shut down. You don't have conferences being shut down. But for some reason, when you're investigating into gender research, all of a sudden you have like all these massive issues, these protests done by people who worship ideology more than they enjoy science. And again, like, why would they behave like this unless they already knew the result, right? Unless they knew what the researchers are going to find, unless they knew what the studies are going to show up, why would they behave like this? So apparently you have to be careful of what you say both in and out of the workplace. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but science cannot operate like this. The institution is absolutely corrupt to the core. Until this gets fixed, the institution is corrupt. And I do not understand why people can admit that police officers can be corrupt, that judges can be corrupt, that politicians can be corrupt. But for some reason, when it comes to the science, when it comes to scientists, they believe, no, like, the scientists can never be swayed. You know, you cannot, you can buy a politician, but you cannot buy a scientist. You can intimidate a police officer, but you cannot intimidate. Why are people thinking like this? Honestly, I don't understand. Like, here in Eastern Europe, we don't think like this. But for some reason, in the rest of the world, people genuinely do believe, yeah, no, well, he's a scientist. He cannot possibly lie. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.